Hello there, everybody. Bunneh here, and I've got the itch. No, nothing like that. Get your mind out of the gutter. I'm talking about old school RuneScape. In particular, I have the desire to explore content uncharted by these little Bunneh paws. That content being the Hallowed Sepulchre. How the hell do you pronounce this?
Sepulchre.
Sepulchre?
Sepulchre.
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 Sepulchre. Got it. Anyways, I've been watching Flippin' Old School's Trader Steve series lately, which I would highly recommend checking out because it's really unique and entertaining, and he recently started completing this thing as part of his account's advancement. Upon watching this, I realized I have never completed a single run of this thing in my entire time playing Old School RuneScape. I knew about it and remembered seeing some short videos when it first released, but I just never had the time to check it out myself. But once the die was cast, well, there was no turning back, and you can probably guess what happened next. Alright, so maybe you guessed incorrectly the first time, but the second time you surely figured out I was going to be completing the Hallowed Sepulchre. Now, some of you are still probably asking yourselves, what is this word that you can barely pronounce, and why do you want to complete it? Well, dear viewer, allow me to enlighten your face. In very quick summary, agility is a skill in old school RuneScape that helps with traveling the game and accessing areas that you previously couldn't. Certain shortcuts are barred behind agility levels, and the higher your character's agility, the faster the run speed will replenish. The Hallowed Sepulchre is an agility minigame that offers experience upon completion, in addition to a unique currency that can be used in the reward shop. Now, the agility experience is a nice bonus, don't get me wrong, but it's not the reason that I want to complete this course. No, the main reason that I want to do this is to acquire the Ring of Endurance! Or at least it was, until I realized that this is only acquirable from the coffin on the 5th floor, which requires level 92 agility, fuck me! But there's two other items that I want from completing this minigame that are far more obtainable. The Dark Dye and Strange Old Lockpick. Dark Dyes are cosmetic colorings that you can apply to your graceful set to make it look mwah! Strange Old Lockpicks are used in a completely different minigame called Barrows, and without getting into all of that, they're basically just a quality of life upgrade for the account. Fortunately, Dark Dyes are purchased from the minigame's reward shop, which technically means that they're guaranteed over time, but the Strange Old Lockpicks are random drops from coffins inside of the minigame, so there's no guarantee I'll get one of these. Now, as I mentioned before, I have seen some content pertaining to the Hallowed Sepulchre, but if I'm being honest, I didn't really pay much attention to it outside of watching the pretty colors. I also refused to look at a guide beforehand because I want the experience to be authentic and enraging. With that being said, it's time to dive in balls deep. I started to gear up and organize my inventory to what I thought might be necessary to complete the minigame. While I didn't know the specifics, I did know that I would need a crossbow, a grappling hook, and some building materials. I put on my full graceful set at first because I figured that was the logical choice, but then I opted to change into my 99 thieving cape and hood because it's my only max skill and I like to flex. I even bought a high-quality thieving cape keychain to attach to my gym bag for the unforeseen chance of a gym bro recognizing it and complimenting me. Anyways, flash forward through the streets of Darkmeyer and we find ourselves entering into the Hallowed Sepulchre for the first time. Don't believe me? I've got a music track unlocked to prove it. Anyways, we chat with this shady dude for a few minutes and I can't help but speculate that his voice sounds a little something like this.
If you find any of these hallowed marks, I'd be willing to take them off your hands. In exchange, I can provide tools that can help you within the hallowed...
Alright, so more than likely he can pronounce this place just fine, but I can't, and it's my video, goddammit! Anyways, we finish the conversation and dive right in for our first attempt. Outside of the couple clips I've seen over the years, I really have no idea what to expect, and even if I did, knowing and doing are two different things. All I know is that it's agility, and all I'm going to do is fail. This first flamey obstacle is fucking awesome, but it's also daunting to look at because I really don't know what I'm looking at. After watching for a moment, I start to notice gaps where my character could safely stand between animations, so I just go for it. Surprisingly, I make it through on my first attempt and decide to take advantage of the RuneLite client before proceeding. I mark a few tiles that were safe to make future repetitions of this course a little bit easier, although I find out later on down the line that this isn't entirely consistent or predictable, so this doesn't do a whole lot for me. The next obstacle is a giant fucking boomerang sword that instantly makes me regret my decision to come here. Honestly though, this is one of the easier obstacles in the minigame, and once again, I cruise right by first try. Up next is another flamey flame fire obstacle with a different firing pattern than the first, but ultimately it's just as easy. Walking down these stairs essentially marks the end of the first level, but unbeknownst to me there's a grapple point here that would take me over to another ledge where I could loot a coffin, which yields the hallowed marks that I'm looking for in addition to a roll at the strange old lockpick. Also unbeknownst to me is the fact that this minigame is timed, and if you don't complete the level you're on in the set time frame, the door to the next level locks and prevents you from progressing any further. I try praying at this obelisk to see what it does, but I receive the tooltip that it doesn't respond to my lack of faith. This is Jagex, the makers of RuneScape, telling me to put on a holy symbol, you heathen as fuck! So I grab a holy symbol from my bank and head back inside for our second attempt. Shortly after completing the first level, I come across the construction obstacle that I brought wooden planks and nails for. Now, as it turns out, the ancient entity that runs this place is incredibly particular about the building materials that you use to construct temporary bridges, because you're supposed to use a certain type of plank with a certain type of nail, but I didn't fucking know that, so now we can't build the bridge. Up next is an obstacle where statues fire magical crossbow bolts down a corridor. I'm sure there's a set pattern to which statues fire at which moment, but it seemed easy enough to avoid, so I just went for it. Next up were these strange tile things, which, if I'm being honest, I still don't entirely understand. My ignorance gets rewarded with a giant sword straight to the face, but we recuperate pretty quickly. Then I come across this small area with glowing braziers to either side, and upon trying to pass through the barrier, the game informs me that I need a suitable offering to use, which tells me that I need to sacrifice the remains of something. Given that this whole place resides inside the vampire capital of Gielinor, I speculated that I probably needed vampire ashes. In the next area is the same magical crossbow obstacle that we encountered earlier, but they seem to be shooting just a bit faster than before. Either way, it's pretty easy to slip past. In the next room are some more flamey flames and spinny swords, but the highlight of this fuckery is our first encounter of stacking obstacles. Now we have to deal with the magical crossbow shots and the mysterious highlighting tiles that I have no idea what to do with. I won't lie, this part tripped me up for a good bit, but I found the best strategy was to wait for the line of bolts to come into view, and then progress across the tiles where the missing bolt was. This seemed to work, although I still fumbled it hard and was put to absolute shame by this other player that ran straight through, you son of a bitch! Anyways, after countless attempts, we finally make it through, past the next spinny sword and into the next line of flamey flames, but the statues and animations are beginning to coordinate at separate times, meaning that what worked before wasn't going to work now. With some well-timed clicks, we made it through without much issue, but I can definitely tell that the difficulty is increasing. Lying on the ground is an NPC that tells us the next obstacle is an absolute nightmare to bypass and we might as well turn back now. He also breaks the fourth wall in a way by acknowledging the benefits that an overhead orbital camera would offer. Oh, Jagex, you are some cheeky bastards, aren't you? Next to the NPC is another brazier area, but I haven't found any vampires to strangle, so we can't enter here yet. We walk downstairs, and Fish Runner 82 was not joking about this obstacle because it's ridiculous. There's a giant line of flamey flame traps on both sides of the corridor, and magical crossbow statues at the end nearest to us. Zooming out the camera definitely helps with seeing the full picture, but to be honest, it's also really confusing because there's a whole lot going on all at once. As I said before, these statues probably have a set animation pattern, but I couldn't figure it out, so trial and error was my friend here. I quickly learned that you could stand in certain lines between the flamey flame statues, then walk back and forth to avoid the encroaching crossbow bolts, but the flamey statues traded fire bursts, meaning that no single tile was safe for more than a few seconds. I failed this obstacle an embarrassing amount of times, but eventually I got the timing down and made it through. The bad news is, we took way too long and the door is locked. The good news is, I'm no longer a heathen and can pray at these obelisks for run energy. So, what did we learn from this first run? Well, firstly, I need to choose the right plank and nail combination to bypass that construction obstacle, and since I had a handy supply of mithril bars in the bank, I decided to smith those into nails and use oak planks. Secondly, I needed something to sacrifice to bypass the brazier obstacle, but I wasn't entirely convinced it was vampire ashes at first, so I just gathered a couple to test the theory out. Next, I restructured my whole inventory to accommodate these changes, and decided to tweak my graphical settings because for some reason I was getting really choppy frame rates at times, which doesn't make any sense at all because this game is 20 years old! I eventually discovered that my FPS was capped for some reason, so unchecking this box solved all of the problems. So with our new inventory set up and settings adjusted, we were ready for round 3 with this place that I can barely pronounce. I honestly soared through the first level this time, and upon descending the stairs into the next area, I noticed that grapple point that I had missed before. We grapple across and loot the coffin, which yields us some hallowed marks. Ah, the first of many. Working through the second level, we notice another grapple point location partway through, which yielded us some more marks and death runes. This tells me that loot from these coffins can be random and that I should probably free up some inventory space moving forwards. The rest of the obstacles in this level are pretty simple and we breeze past most of them, but upon looting the next coffin, we get randomly poisoned by a trap. Because, you know, that's fun. This tells me that we should bring along something to cure poison, and I just so happen to have the perfect thing stashed away in my Bunneh vault for this type of occasion. The tile obstacles still confuse the hell out of me, and I have no idea what is happening or how to avoid it, but we persevere. Ahead is another section locked off from our current setup. It requires runes for an enchantment spell that we don't currently possess, so yet another thing that we have to bring along the next time. And then it's back to the dreaded corridor of flamey flames and bolty bolts. Outside of trial and error, I still have no idea how to complete this thing properly. Every time I think I start to recognize a pattern, it changes, and every time that I think I'm safe on a tile, I'm definitely not. Marking tiles doesn't really seem to help here either, because like I said, no tile is safe for more than a few seconds, so progression here changes every single time. This one time, I made it like one tile away from victory, and then I got set on fire. Eventually we make it through, and there ain't no chance we did it on time, but that's okay. We learned a lot, and we have some slight changes to make. Our new setup includes a prayer book and a rune pouch. The prayer book can be used to cure poison if we trigger a trap again, and the rune pouch holds all the runes we need to cast the enchantment spell to enter that new room. Our fourth attempt is by far the most successful, and we find ourselves, never mind. But legitimately, this is our best run overall. We grave rob some coffins, we play some Dance Dance Revolution, we dodge some swords like Neo, we sacrifice some vampires to the Elder Gods, and shit! Alright, this time is different, I can feel it. Think of the solution, not the problem. Well, that didn't work. But what does end up working is avoiding the line of flames and moving back and forth between those available tiles to avoid the incoming magical bolts. It's slower than it should be, but it does all work out, and we finally get to the end before the door closes. Only to discover that we have to have 82 agility to enter the next area, fuck me! Our fifth attempt through this place is much of the same, only we do encounter another NPC in one of the brazier rooms that acknowledges the importance of fashionscape. Why yes, Jin, I couldn't agree more. We do end up stumbling across that enchantment platform again, and immediately get poisoned. But this gives us the perfect chance to read some shit from our book and hope that the almighty RuneScape deities cleanse our bodies of the sins that we have just partaken in. Yes, Pastor, I am smelling the fresh bread.
I am smelling fresh bread.
I still fail the final corridor obstacle multiple times, but it actually goes pretty smooth overall, and we finish just in time. Now at this point, you guys have seen what the first 3 floors of this place has to offer, and it's pretty much just rinse and repeat from here. Vampire dust is something I'm going to have to keep supplied as we repeat more runs, and I may have to smith some more nails or mill some more boards along the way, but we're pretty much covered otherwise. So you're probably wondering right now, but Bunneh, did you get the dark dyes and strange old lockpick you're looking for? Well, I'm making this video at the same time that I'm recording it, and as of right now, I have very few hallowed marks to show for it, so no, not yet. Plus, I'll probably purchase some of the minigame-specific upgrades first, just because they make subsequent runs a little bit easier. But I'm a persistent little Bunneh and plan on grinding out all of this off camera. I just wanted to bring you guys along for a short part of the journey. Sure, I might have been late to the party by like 3 years, but better late than never, right? Right? Anyways, that's gonna wrap it up for this video, so thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, then please be sure to leave me a like down below, subscribe to the channel with notifications on so you can stay up to date on all my latest content, join the Discord for a community of like-minded woodland creatures, and please keep leaving me comments because they warm my little Bunneh heart. A special thank you goes out to all of the Bunnehs that support me on Patreon. You guys are amazing. Thank you again so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.